we're a builder. Our pockets aren't super deep to go out and crack $1 million or $2 million on a piece of property. Surrounding yourself with that strategic partner who knows how to put a pro forma together to sell to the banks. You get 3 or 4 entities putting some assets into this, and all of a sudden the bite isn't as big.
Welcome to Builders, Budgets, and Beers. I'm Reece Barnes, and I started this podcast to have real conversations about money in the building industry, the wins, the mistakes, and everything in between. I believe builders deserve to feel confident about their finances, and that starts by hearing from others who've been through it too. This industry can be slow to change, but the right stories and the right tools can make profitability feel possible. Let's get into it. Alrighty, David, mics are hot. We're rolling.
All right, good.
I appreciate you hopping on BBB.
This is exciting. I've been listening to you, and now I get to be on it. I don't have a fancy microphone and headphones like you, but you get what you get.
Hey, well, your sound quality is solid. You know, we've had people on that have they've done episodes from like outdoor restaurants. We've had people do them from their trucks. We've had people with like fans in the background with a tick that you hear, and you have none of that. So you're doing great. You're doing great.
Well, you may get some random employee come flying in here like Kramer or something, but you never know.
Hey, that's a part of running a small business.
Right.
But cool. So I appreciate you jumping on here. As always, let's just run out of the gate with a little introduction. Tell the listeners a little about yourself, where you're from, what you build, a little about the business, just some of the basics.
Yeah, the basics are central Minnesota, St. Cloud, Minnesota. As I mentioned earlier, minus 17 2 days ago. So
insane.
Balmy 24 today.
A nice crisp.
Which we love it. I mean, the snow is melting. It's great. Werschay Homes is our company, and we call it Werschay Companies because we have a lot of other little things going on, but our luxury high-end design build is the main flagship business that we have. And Central Minnesota, you know, we're building, 12 to 14 of those a year. And we have some other ancillary companies. We have a small real estate brokerage. We have a sister company called Space Properties that just builds a single family rental portfolio.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And we have a remodel division called Renovate by Werschay Homes. And those are just crazy remodels that we do, usually gutting houses down or pushing them over, but just large scale remodels.
Okay. So what is that? 5, 6 entities at least?
Yeah. But the Werschay Homes and Renovate are the flagship ones.
That's where the sausage is made.
Yeah. I've always had my real estate license and broker's license. So we market all of our own stuff, and that's just kind of handy. A lot of our clients have, they have a house to sell or something. We can help them with that transition.
Totally. Well, okay. So I hear that often, in the, I call it just like the real estate world, which we're going to bundle construction in to that. Yeah. The construction real estate world is like, you see a lot of guys, a lot of gals, they'll start in the agent world, the broker world, and then they'll start building. Was that your transition? So you started in real estate, or how did that work for you?
No. If we want to go back to the way I started, is kind of interesting. I finished college. I'm from St. Cloud. I went to school in Michigan. I got my degree in computer programming. But as a summer job, I worked for a contractor, and I was a gopher. I was a laborer. I was the whatever guy. And so when I was graduating, that builder said, "Hey, what are you going to do when you graduate?" And I said, I got a degree in computer programming and I hate it, but I can get a job. And he goes, "Well, do you want to come work for me?" I said, "No." I said, "That was just to get me through school."
Yeah.
He says, "No, I don't want you out in the field. Frankly, you weren't that valuable out there." But he said, I just need somebody in the office. I kind of want to grow my business. And, so I need someone, marketing. I need someone to, design homes and stuff. So I came back and I jumped in with him and I trained myself in on CAD design. And when I started with him that year, we built 12 homes. It was him, myself, and a part-time receptionist. And then 11 years later, when I left, we were building over 100 homes a year. And
What?
we just built a monster, very production based
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, so through that process, I found myself working so closely with the clients that we thought it probably made sense that I got my real estate license. That's how I got my real estate license.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then through that process, built a house for a really nice couple who had a beautiful daughter. And I met her and I ended up marrying her.
That's awesome.
And she had an amazing eye for interior design and she didn't know it. And so in 2003, left that business and we wanted to do something unique and really bring a different product to our market. The market was kind of stuck in its way and we said, we had more ideas and we said, let's start our own business and just start building custom homes. And we thought we'll build one or two a year and be happy, just the two of us. And since then, I wasn't happy with one or two, and we've
Yeah.
grown the business to 12 to 14. We've got two different developments that we build homes in, and we develop the land. And so when we brought our business to the market, one of the unique features that we brought was the fact that if you build with us, you get Molly's services as part of the package.
Got it.
So you don't have to go out and hire your own interior designer. It's right here. She's gonna be your tour guide for everything selection that you need in your house, and she's amazing with our clients and with picking everything. She's still doing it today.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so it sounds like you really owe it all to the construction real estate world.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn. Go ahead.
Well, no, once you're in this, you love it, and that's how
Right.
it was for us. We just loved it, and it's just so much fun, and you get to meet so many people, and just I didn't know that I had that entrepreneurial spirit in me.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. The way we started the business is I had left that other company and I thought I wanted to go into a different industry.
Yeah.
And I worked there for about 2 months and I'm like, this is not my bag. So I quit like at noon on a Thursday.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
came home and Molly's like, what are you doing home? I said, I quit. And she seriously, she looked at me, she goes, can we go build homes now?
Yeah. 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 She knew.
She knew. She knew. So, and that's what we both loved. So, yeah, we're still doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, going from a laborer in a shop that's doing 12 units a year, build that thing up to 100 plus units a year, kind of a find yourself moment, think you want to explore other things. And now you're like building this great business in St. Cloud. Um, I mean, I feel like you've got a lot of mentorship around this. I mean, I can only imagine that the learning that you gleaned off of the first shop that you worked for was incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though production homes, the thing that remains the same is the house plan. That doesn't change. But
Yeah.
when you go to a high end home, luxury home, the process is the same. You still have to start by excavating and putting your foundation in. Everything just takes a little longer. And there's more
Sure.
details, but the process of building a home doesn't change a whole lot. There's just more steps involved. It was a blast. It's a blast. And we were able to bring something different, a new level of design to to this market.
Yeah, of course. So do you consider yourself like a bags on contractor? Like, are you like a in the field guy, or are you more of like the business process guy? Go ahead.
I'm the business process guy. No, if I think I still have my tool belt. It's
Yeah.
leather. I don't think they wear leather ones anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, we joke about it because um, we have an annual meeting every year, annual trade partner meeting, and we bring everybody in for 3-4 hours, and I kind of go through and give a presentation, kind of what we did, where we're going to go, and stuff, and then we have some fun. And sometimes I'll do multiple choice questions, and one of them was, if you see Dave on the job site, what are you allowed to ask him?
Hmm.
What color is the paint? What's the flooring going in here? What's the roof pitch going to be? Or how was your
Yeah.
weekend?
Yeah.
And the only thing you can ask me is, how's your weekend?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So no, not the bags on guy, but I understand every aspect of the building process. So that
For
was the
sure.
cool thing about, working out in the field, is I learned every aspect of it.
For sure. For sure. Okay. So even like on this, so again, you started at this larger company, and then now you and Molly have built a sizable business yourself. Tell me about how like the people that you worked with along the way have impacted you.
Right. Well, a lot of it is about connections and, networking and things like that. But I knew one of the things that I found out very, very early on in business was, know what you don't know. And,
Okay.
there's the adage, fake it till you make it. Well, if you don't have a shot at making it, you know,
Right. You're wasting
align
time.
yourself with someone who does. And
Right.
so I was fortunate enough to be introduced to a guy. I don't know, some people might know him, Al Trellis with Home Builders Network.
Okay.
Al's been a speaker at IBS for years. And so I was introduced to him a long time ago. And so when I started my business, I just called him up and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. You got room for one more that you can coach and mentor and consult along the way. And he said, yeah, he goes, you're a horse I'd bet on. So, let's do this. So he was always there to bounce ideas off of, ultimately became a partner in some of our land development too, which was, super helpful. And so I've always said, you align yourself with a good mentor, and then align yourself with people who are good at what you're not good at. And of course, you can't do that immediately when you start a business.
Right.
I know finances, but I don't like diving into the minutia of that. But when I started my business, I brought somebody in, one day a week, and,
Right.
handled the finances, handled the draws, that kind of stuff. And,
Yeah.
as we grew, now I have a bookkeeper and a CFO, and they just handle that side of the business for us, which is great. Same thing with, superintendents. When I started my business, I wasn't going to be a superintendent, but, I brought on a contract superintendent who was also my trim carpenter, and
Yeah.
he managed the first few jobs for me until I got to a point where I could hire somebody for that. So I've always thought, and it's worked,
Yeah.
it's worked this far, but, have a good mentor and know what you don't know.
Totally. So would you say that like selecting a mentor is this like big strategic, thoughtful process? Or I guess more directly, like how did you pick Al? Was it because Al had like a brand and a reputation, or how do you advise people to go about doing this?
Well, I picked Al because, he had done some consulting for me in the other business.
Hmm.
And then been at a number of his seminars. And so we kind of knew each other. And so I just called him up and said, hey, I'm going to need some help, and that's how I knew him. And, if it wasn't him, I was going to have to find somebody else. And there's always going to be a strategic partner in your line of work.
Hmm.
And I found that, there was other strategic partners in my business too. Um, there was a land developer. It was a lumberyard that had a piece of land that they had developed, and
Okay.
it was kind of stale. And I approached them, and they had been our lumber supplier. And I approached them and said, okay, you have this. I can't afford to buy all your lots. I can't afford to develop land. However, I would I would like to earn the um, the status of being the only builder in the neighborhood. And in
Yeah.
return, I'm going to build a model home. We're going to have it open consistent hours, and we're going to have one model home up. We'll have another one underway. But I know the only way to market this model is I need it furnished. And so I would need help with the furnishings also. And they were on board, and we set up a takedown schedule, and they helped me out with the furniture and gave me exclusive rights to the neighborhood. And it put us on the map. It was
Totally.
great. Yeah, it was real helpful to get us on the map and give us a place where we could bring people in, they could see our product, and roll from there. And some people bought in the neighborhood, some people had their own land, and that's kind of how we are today too.
Totally. Is that a play? We'll call it a play, right? Is that a play that you ran like consistently, or is that more just like you mentioned, just to get your foot in the door or your name on the map? Is that something that you do repeatedly, or was that just something to get the Werschay name out there, and then from there it was all just like referrals and
No, it's consistent to this day. It's still our play.
okay,
So when we develop land, so I have this theory. If you're a car dealer, you're not going to sell cars on an empty lot,
yeah,
right? So if I've got
totally,
if I've got this development, I got all these lots available to build homes on, but I'm not doing anything to drive people to that neighborhood to see the homes, to see how cool the neighborhood is. I'm not going to sell any. So
hmm
I've always had a model home and a spec home so people can come out and see different styles of building. And when they
totally,
come out there, and we like to make our neighborhoods unique. So, we're not just building the house, but we're building a place where you can live and you're going to appreciate. And because we have control of the neighborhood, you're not going to have somebody buying a lot next door and putting up something that doesn't, hold you the value of your home.
for sure. So is that so like, and even the like when you mentioned like the control of the neighborhood too, I do want to understand like a little bit more of like the experience that you guys build in your neighborhoods. But in terms of going back to this play that you're running of like the lumberyard had the land and you were like, hey, I can't afford the land, but I do want exclusive rights to build on it. Like that to me just seems like a huge win, and B, like too simple. Is that the play to run for these like guys that are wanting to get into more developments, to go in and just be like, hey, look, like the value for the person that has the land is for me to say I'm gonna take the upfront risk of building that spec home or that model home, and this is gonna be the product that we're gonna start like showcasing essentially. And that's enough for them to say, okay, yeah, great, you're the exclusive builder. Or tell me a little bit more about how to get into that world of being the
Well,
exclusive builder.
yeah, I think possibly, God's timing is everything, but the market was such that you know people just weren't buying in there, and
Mhm.
the builder that was in there was building in multiple different areas, so he didn't have a lot of, um, he didn't have any skin in the game to stay in there, and so I just created this skin, and we set up a takedown schedule. I still had to commit to buying so many lots a year and stuff, so there was still risk on our side to do this. But
Sure.
the upside is we were just getting our name out there, and it
Yep.
was hard to do that if you just buy one lot over here, and then you build one house, and then you buy one over here, and you buy one over here. Now it's a place where people continually try. We're driving to see our homes. Like, oh, they're building another one. Oh, what's this one going to look like? They always do something different.
Right.
Um, and then that's kind of how we got our name on the map.
Okay. How big is St. Cloud population wise?
We're a really, really weird community. Um, so St.
Okay.
Cloud's probably 60,000.
Okay.
But we have the Mississippi River that runs through our city, and
Okay. Cool.
St. Cloud is on both sides of the river, but the county there's two different counties on either side of the river. So we have basically three cities and three different counties in a very, very small area. So they call us the Tri-County area. So if you tally everyone up, all the different little communities, 100,000.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, so I grew up in a town very similar sized, and we always got it was like a feeder. city, meaning there's like all these like tiny like Nebraska towns around Grand Island, and
Yeah.
everyone would like come into Grand Island to like do their shopping and stuff like that. But also that's like what established it as like a bigger community, is people could come in, they knew that there's more amenities, more jobs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's like where the demand's coming from. Okay, cool. So even just going back a little bit more, you mentioned that like to kind of differentiate yourselves, like you're building more of like a place that you live. Like what are some of the staple things that you guys have found that have been important to add into these developments in your communities? Or is it just like purely the product of the home?
When we develop land, we want something different and unique. So like the one I started in, that had a giant pond in the middle of it.
Cool.
Okay, so pond, walking trail, kind of a neat place. It wasn't a shortcut to anywhere. If you drove in there, it's because you live there. So
Yeah.
great place to raise a family. We've got another neighborhood that we're just wrapping up. We just have a couple lots left, but that was all acreage living. So that was, 250 acres, 60 lots, and these were all 2 to 9 acre home sites. Everybody's dream,
Awesome.
right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So we had that. We have a community lodge with a community swimming pool and playground and sledding hill and stuff. So a place for people to commune. And so that was the uniqueness of that one. We just started 3, 4 years ago. We just opened up another small little cul-de-sac neighborhood, golf course on one side, pond on the other side. So you want lake views, you want golf course views. And again, it's a cul-de-sac, no through traffic, not a shortcut. Great place to raise a family.
I love it. And to me, that all sounds like very simple stuff, but the simplicity of it is so important.
Yeah.
Like even explaining it as like not the cut through neighborhood. That's stuff that someone who's not in building myself would be like, oh, like you don't even think about it. But then when you get into that neighborhood and you experience it and it's quiet and people are on their half acre, 9 acre lot, right? Like it puts off like a very compelling place to want to move to.
Yeah, and we always try to make the entrance something special. The one out in the country, you drive in a half a block of landscape before you would see a house. Um,
Awesome.
the one on the golf course, it's called the gates, and so we
Yeah.
made the entrance look like a gated community. Well, we can't have those here, but we have gates up that don't operate, and we got a little guard station that happens to be the bus stop for the kids, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's super cool and quaint.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So it sounds like even then, so like it started with the pond, and now you've got ones with like golf course views and other stuff. Is that kind of like what you saw the trajectory as? Is like just as you got bigger, you take on like bigger and bigger and more unique, like I would call them fixtures to anchor a community around, or is that just kind of how it worked out?
I think it's just how I'd like to develop land. I think you could probably take a flat farm field, and with the right marketing and the right amenities to the neighborhood, you make it really unique. Water's always big if you can get water. I think that's important. And, but it's just making it unique. It's not just a flat field. Make it cool, make it a place you want to go home to. So, our tagline is build different. And
Yeah,
so that's kind of how we are with the land we develop too. Is let's develop it, but let's do it different.
totally. No, I love
Yeah.
it. Now, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. So with that, so obviously like in developing and doing speculative builds, there's a lot of financial risk around that. At least from like an outsider's point of view, or maybe someone that's trying to get into it. Do you have any stories where like you've won huge or you've lost big time on those projects?
Well, I mean, some of it's a little bit of both. Some of
Mhm.
it was buying the land when when people needed to get out of it, and it was expensive. But again, I go back to those strategic partners. Um, you know, we're a builder. Our pockets aren't super deep to go out and crack $1 million or $2 on a piece of property. But surrounding yourself with that strategic partner who knows how to put put a pro forma together to sell to the banks. So you get your bank involved, you get the landowner involved. So, they're maybe on the hook for a little while too. And you put some of your own skin in the game. And so you get three or four entities, putting some assets into this, and all of a sudden the bite isn't as big.
Yeah.
And yes, there's certainly risk. Yes, there's payments you got to make. Yes, there were some times where we had to go digging and find another well. And you get a couple people that are willing to put some money in to get you through a tough time.
Yeah.
I would say the opposite of that is I'm fighting the sun coming in a window. It's really weird here.
No, you're good.
The opposite of that is we did have a piece of property that we had gone through, all the surveying, engineering, and we were just about ready to get going on this, and we had money down with the landowner, and all of a sudden the recession headlights were shining in our eyes, and
Oh no.
we're like, we got to pump the brakes right now. And so, all that, we just gave our deposit away and say, no, we're not doing this thing right now. And
Yeah.
it was a huge blessing. I mean, if we'd have
That's what
taken,
I was going to ask.
man, that would have been that could have been the story I was telling you about.
Yeah. Totally. So that was 100% the right call, was to pump
Right.
the brakes.
Yep. Yeah.
That's crazy. And how long, like how fast was that timeline to where you had to make that decision?
Boy, that was a while back, but it didn't take us very long once the lights were shining in our eyes.
Yeah.
It was like, things are changing and things don't feel good, and this is not the time to be doing this. And,
Yeah.
and the landowner, he understood. We got to keep our deposit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
But he understood, and I don't know, a couple weeks maybe.
That's just
We
crazy.
probably had a couple months into this thing, but wow.
The alternative, if you just would have like stuck with it and you were just like, nah, this is just like a blip, and
Yeah.
like you just like doubled down, would have
Yeah.
been bad.
Well, and the sad part is there were so many people that got caught in that.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
good people around here that got caught in it. You know, the good news is we were able to take advantage of some of that years later when, land went back to the banks and then back to the county. We bought one little neighborhood on a county auction, and it turned out to be a fantastic, little neighborhood, had a lake, of course. But
Yeah.
and we took it and we rebranded it, and, started our normal system and process. And it worked out. But yeah, that was a tough time, and some people did fall to victim of the recession.
For sure. Um, and again, that was just like everyone talks about it. Like if they were building before the recession, and even some guys that started in the recession, it's just amazing how you make those not gut decisions, because I'm sure there was more than just like a feeling, but how much that actually plays into it. And
Oh,
just like your spidey senses are going off and you're like, this isn't good.
yeah, yep, so true.
Cool. Well, so with that said, so you mentioned the strategic partners being big. You've referenced it a few times. I'm just curious, do you have like a strategic partner role or type of person that you think is just the most important to get aligned with? Or is it just kind of like it just depends on what you're doing?
I don't think there's necessarily one.
Okay.
I think there's strategic partners. Some have no vested interest. Some just are there because they want to help you. Some might be a banker. I bring up, Al Trellis. He was a strategic partner because he became part of our, partners in some of our land deals. That was really helpful. But I look at a lot of, I'd say 90% of our trade partners, our subcontractors, they're strategic partners. And, we work generally with the same people all the time. We establish a relationship with them, and, they're loyal, and some of them are just additional supervisors on jobs because they've been with us so long, and the communication out there. So I even I go right down to our trade partners as being strategic partners.
That's probably the better question is like, so, and that just kind of like opened it up is like, you view your subcontractors. And I say this regularly is like some of the best builders I talk to, they don't just look at their subs as people installing tile, right? Or roughing and plumbing, right? They like really emphasize the importance of it. So how big of a swing? So you talk like your subcontractors, you look at them as strategic partners, but who's all included in that net? And like, how can the listener start to like really view their business and the individuals that they work with on more maybe an elevated lane of thinking with the strategic partner mentality?
I think that once you establish those, those trade partners as being your strategic partners, and they understand it too, and you have that relationship, um, you can leverage that. They love the fact that you're building homes and consistently using them, and they want to know how your production schedule is, and what your outlook is, so they can kind of balance their year also. So that helps them a lot in their projections. At the same time, they appreciate it enough that they might be willing to help you on certain projects. So, fun little story. During the recession, um, nobody's building spec homes, much less
Yeah.
custom homes. But I go back to my motto. You can't sell cars on an empty lot. So I'm at the IBS show, and I'm sitting in a custom home builder, conference, and everybody's got their head hung low, and times were tough, and they're saying, "Is anybody building spec homes?" I'm like the only guy who raised his hands, and they all
Yeah.
look at me and they go, "What do you mean? How are you building spec homes? The banks aren't giving you any money. Um, you know, how do you afford to do this?" And so I kind of said, "Here's my motto." And so I went to a bank. I said, "I want to build a spec home." They said, "No." I said, "Well, what if I got somebody outside the industry to co-sign for me, who, had money in other areas, but would co-sign for me to guarantee it?" And they said, "Sure, but, this is how much we need down." Like, well, I just want a co-signer. So then I went to all my trade partners, my strategic partners, and I said, "Okay," I said, "if we don't build a spec home, none of you build a spec home." I said, "But
Right.
if we build a spec home, there's a really good chance that we're going to get some marketing relief off of this, and we're going to build another one because someone came out and saw it."
Right.
And so I said, "I will build this spec home. I'm going to pay you 60% of your invoice, and you have to hold 40% of it until the day we close. Might be 6 months, might be 6 years. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And do you want to roll the dice with me?" And they all said yes. So,
That's nuts.
so the bank gave me the money. I got a cosigner. I didn't have to come up with the money down that the bank required because all my subs were holding 40%. And my interest payment was substantially less because I wasn't borrowing as much. And we built a
Right.
spec home, and we marketed it, and we sold more homes off of it. And it was great. And it worked great. Well, so back to the IBS show. So after the seminar, this guy comes up to me and he says, "I like your story." And I said, "Oh, well, thanks. It worked." And he was with Residential Design Build magazine. He goes, "We're going to do an article on you on this because this is really unique."
Awesome.
And yeah, it was totally cool. And so they did the spread on us, and they had pictures of the house that we used, and in this example, and so it worked, and we did another one. And well, then the market changed, things got better, interest rates came down. Well, I didn't need anybody for a while,
Right.
and here recently, it's borrowing money from the bank is really expensive, and I went back to my people. I said, "Same game," and they said, "Same game. Let's go."
That is odd. I've never heard that. And that is so creative. Like, that's what it takes.
You, creativity is, I've always said, in order to solve your own problems, you have to solve everybody else's,
Yeah,
and
sure.
it's fun. I love getting creative on any sort of deal that's out there, any opportunity, But again, this worked, and we did it. We sold the house right away. We're doing another one.
It's kind of like that, like no one goes to an empty bar, right? But people
Right.
will stand in line, right, for a bar that's like looks like it's popping, right? You're kind of the guy that's like no one else is building. You're the one creating the exciting bar, and that generated more interest for people to come along.
Yeah, generated more interest, generated more traffic, help build our brand some more, and so the tagline "Build Different" works in all areas of this business. It's not just the design where we thought it was, but yeah, you got to get creative in other areas.
Totally, and I think the other thing too, just like is like a testament to how you do view, networking and your mentors and your strategic partners and all of that is you were like essentially taking care of them. Like it was important to you to have that conversation, be like, look, like everyone's slow. If we don't do this and we don't get like a deal cut that's going to help everybody, everyone's going to be on the sidelines.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. Go
And,
ahead.
and the other side of strategic partners is it's other builders. There's a bunch of us that are in the trenches together. The contractor coalition, great example. You go there and there's a
Totally.
bunch of guys all doing the same thing, all running into the same roadblocks, but every one of them has solved that problem, has run into it and figured out you can help people out. So, I look at those relationships as huge. I have relationships with great builders in different markets, even in Minnesota, because I can call them up and I say, "Hey, here's what I have going on," and you can talk frankly with them. And those people are strategic partners, if you will, because it's all about getting better, and putting your processes in place, and sometimes they don't work, and you got to reach out to other people and find out what works for them.
100%. 100%. We haven't touched on processes. What is one of the most recent processes that you've been evaluating and trying to get better
Oh
at
man,
Werschay
my
Homes?
my team, I'm a geek with processes.
Yeah.
Every time something doesn't work, we're like, okay, what's he going to make us do now? But we got to put another process in place so that doesn't change, and so it doesn't happen again. I don't know. Let me think of a recent one. A recent process might even be just tweaking a process we have. Our pre-construction process. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, I've ran it for years, and it's worked pretty well. And it was just like, I think we got to pull this thing out and tweak it. And, got some great ideas out of the contractor coalition. And so it's all right. How are we going to change our pre-construction process so it's better understood by the client? So they understand the steps involved and what's the next step in that process. But yeah, aside from like building a schedule to build a house,
Sure.
which our superintendents do, the pre-construction process is really important to me. And then the client orientation process is very important.
Yeah.
The front end and the back end. And so every time we finish a house, it's like, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and what process do we change?
That's what I
Really.
was going to ask. Go ahead.
No, you're right. Go on.
I was literally going to add on to that. It was going to be of like, is this more of a is it more of like an like something happened that motivates the process evaluation, or are you just doing the process evaluation consistently? And it sounds like you're running like a post mortem or a look back
Right.
on a
Right.
project, and that's where you're talking about the gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what we do. And I think getting that client feedback helps a lot.
Yeah.
For years, it was really hard for me to step out of the process.
Mhm.
So I always wanted to be involved, and when I hired my operations manager right now, my COO, he's like, "I'll take care of it. You don't have to get involved." And I inherently want to jump in and solve the problem. He says, "But when you do that, you cause four more." Uh,
Right.
okay, that's fair. So years ago, we kind of changed our systems that I kind of stepped away and then let the production team take off with it. And then kind of step in at the end. Well, we just recently finished a project, and one of the client's reviews was, "We love our house. It's great, the quality. Superintendent, everybody was awesome." But we were really disappointed that we didn't see Dave very much along the way. And Jim's like, I've been trying to do this for years, and I've finally done it, and now you're telling me. And he explained why I don't get involved, and he explained my personality, and they said, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
He goes, if Dave got involved and stopped in and said hi to you more often, and you said, I got a problem with this, he's going to want to fix it, and he's going to cause 4 more problems for me. He said,
Totally.
and so it was, but it was enough, that we had to reevaluate and say, okay, I do need a couple more touch points along the way, because they felt that. And if they're
Right.
feeling it and telling us, others may have also. So, it's that kind of stuff where you're just constantly just, retooling this thing.
I think that in itself is so great, because you made the jump that so many small business owners, builders, contractors specifically, of like removing themselves from the business, right?
Yeah.
You did it. And then you get that pain or the client saying like, we wanted more Dave time.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, exactly. You're like, I finally did it, and now they're dragging me back in. But I think we need to have kudos. Who's your COO? What's your COO's name?
Jim.
Jim needs a shout out, because to have that conversation with the client and be able to articulate it in that way for them to say, that makes a ton of sense. That is what keeps you from getting dragged back into the process, but then keeping it proactive and helpful to be like, okay, Dave's going to be like getting coffee or breakfast with them, and this is the topics that you're going to talk about. And if you have any of these challenges with the home, this is who they go to and how we handle it.
Yeah.
Like that's just as much of a process, and the importance of removing yourself from the business, than just saying like, all right, I got the team, I'm stepping away, I'm out.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a process freak. Jim does a great job at our pre-construction meetings, our kickoff meetings, and say, okay, how do you like to communicate? Phone calls, email, text messages, what works best? And they tell us. And he says, okay, I'm really good with emails. If you need me right away, text. But I have one rule. If you're pissed off, you pick up the phone and you call me. That doesn't happen any other way. And he says it right out of the jump. And they pick up the phone, and it's like, oh, must have a problem. What's on your mind?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. What would you say is the biggest piece of advice you would give listeners, whether they're younger builders, newer builders, or they are older builders, more tenured builders that are trying to get to a position that you guys are, with multiple entities, removing yourself as the owner from the true day-to-day? What advice would you give them?
I think I said it a little bit, but know what you don't know, and do what you do know. When you grow different entities in a business, we have a portfolio of rental homes. When I got my first rental home, anybody who comes to me and says, "Oh man, I don't think I can make rent this month," and they give me their hardship. Oh man, that's okay. We'll catch up next month. And that's just that's who I am. I just want to help people.
Right.
And you can't run a rental business that way. And I remember this to this day. I had a guy come in to give me his story, and he brought in his wife and his kid. And Nancy, who works for me, is just a rock star. She takes care of, I call her, she's my dumping ground. Anything I need done, she just makes it happen. Well, this guy comes in, and she knew what he was coming in for. And so she said, and I knew what he was coming in for. And she said, hey, John, step in my office for a second. And so he went in his office, and she closed the door. And then he left. And I said, well, how'd that go? She goes, oh, we got our rent. I go, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I sat him down and I said, listen, you have a lot of responsibilities. And 2 of the biggest ones are on the other side of that door, your wife and your child. And if you want to stay in this home and keep a roof over your head, you need to figure out how to, and she just treated him like he was a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, that was cool. You have a new position.
Yeah. Yeah. You are now the rent collector.
And she's great with it, and me, I want to help everybody, and I would have gone broke, but everybody would have had a good roof over their head. But so I
100%.
think, my point is, get people in the right position. And if you're not that person, get somebody who can help you. And if you can't
Yeah.
afford to get somebody that can help, get somebody who can help you once a month or once a week or whatever it is.
That's awesome.
That's, I guess, my biggest thing. Get your processes in place, work on that. And don't forget that it sounds harsh, but we're building homes. We're just building homes.
Yeah.
A lot of times that we get so deep into the weeds on it, especially when you have a larger business and all the different things that are going on. If the bottom line is your job is to build a house, a nice house for a customer, and you want that process to go smooth. So, what can you do to do that? And if you're just starting out, you do it with one home. Don't make it your goal to build 12 your first year.
Totally. No, I think that's, I think just all of it, like, know what you don't know, focus on mentors, build strong strategic partners, focus on processes, keep all of that bundled up in the reality that you're just building homes. I think that's really sound advice.
Yeah. And have fun. It's a blast,
Totally.
and just continue to have fun with it. You're gonna run into things that, may keep you up at night, but, they're all growing pains, and you're just gonna get better from it.
100%. Well, and that's everywhere, right?
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're building homes or building a software company or working at a home builder or working at a software. You got to keep all that in check. I think
Yeah.
that's in
Yeah.
itself good advice.
Yeah, 100%. All the things I'm saying, take the same recipe and go make widgets. It's the same stuff.
Totally. Totally. Well, I appreciate you, Dave. Thanks for hopping on the podcast. You're a wealth of knowledge.
Oh yeah, no, it's
And
my pleasure. I love your podcast. I love listening to, all the different people you have on there, the finance people, the cost plus, the fixed price people. That kind of stuff is a blast. And, we run into all those things too. And it's fun to see what's going on.
of course, and I think that's the big part is getting people like you that are willing to tell their story, share what they've learned, all just to positively impact the fine contractors of America.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We're all going to raise the tide, raise the boat, but we're all going to get better. And that's a big part of it. And we love it. And we're going to keep doing it.
100%.
And thank you for what
100%.
you do, Reece.
I appreciate that, Dave. I'm just the guy behind the mic. I just sit down, I open up a little conversation, do my thing.
Yeah, but sometimes you're having a Modelo, sometimes you're having an athletic. It's fun stuff.
That's right. I need to pick up the beer thing again. I haven't. I've moved to solo cups primarily because there's no beer in here. It's water. But yeah, no, we moved into the new office in Boston. We've got a big team that we're building out, and Costco sells a ton of solo cups. So I just need to figure out how to fill them up with beer, which
Well,
typically
I
I
think
don't
you
have
can
a
get a
problem
solo
with.
cup that's actually metal now.
Actually,
I think
I
so.
need to get one of those. I need to get one of those branded with BBB on it.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my homework. I need to figure out how to incorporate getting beers back onto the podcast, which again shouldn't be a challenge, but I just
Hey,
need to do it.
what's in a name?
That's right. And that everyone gives me grief over that. But it is what it is.
I love it. That's what caught my attention.
That's right. We're marketing guys.
Right.
Dave.
Exactly.
That's what we do. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you. You enjoy the rest of your day, and certainly don't be a stranger.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thanks.
All right. See you, Dave.
See ya.